Dear viewers, for those watching us from home, across the continent, and all over the globe, this is the show that gives you the best debates in the country. This is the Great Debaters Contest Season 8. Who will be the next great debater? I am your host, Chris Buru.
And I am Esperanza Kapanga. And in this pair of schools in the semi-finals, we have the motion on the table being reducing inequality is a myth that can't be achieved.
Well, in the proposition, we have the lovely ladies from Loreto Limuru High School.
In the opposition are the gentlemen from Kapsabet Boys High School.
Who will take the day?
Let's wait and see. Proposer number 1, you have 3 minutes.
Melanie Fain, Loreto High School, Limuru, strongly proposing a motion that states, reducing inequality is a myth that cannot be achieved. Reducing is making something less or smaller in size or quantity. Inequality is the unfair difference between groups of people when some have more wealth, more status, or more opportunity. A myth is something that many believe, but that does not exist or is false. Can't means unable to be something or unable to do something. Achieved means accomplished. The types of inequality will be featuring on income inequality, gender inequality, racial inequality, amongst others. So, TheGuardian.com did an article on 11th March 2014, and they said, if a previous situation has led to a pre-existing inequality, then the people in future will allocate resources in an attempt to correct the already made imbalance. What am I driving at? No matter how hard we try to solve inequality, we'll always end up making a bigger inequality. That is a vicious cycle. A quote by Aristotle, the worst form of inequality is trying to make unequal things equal. The same article, The Guardian, 11th March 2014, had a beautiful heading. Why people prefer unequal societies. What does that mean? The concept of inequality has become so much as a painful reality that we have no option but to take it as fact and be at home with it. In the sense that, you may hear it and tell me as the devil's advocate because I don't have hopes for equality, but let's be honest. I'll steal words from a hit song, Lemon by Nad. He says, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. Let's be honest. The vicious cycle is no matter how hard we try to solve inequality, we will always come back to the same thing, inequality. I'll talk about racial inequality. This inequality begins with a perception. What thought? That because I am lighter, I am better. Catherine Craig, a racial activist in US, said that the statement, all whites are racist, doesn't hurt her at all. It just makes her sad because it's probably true. Racism is real in US, and to some extent it's trickling down to Africa. I'll get to that point. Now, Time Inc. Net did an article on the 9th of August 2018, and they said 3 steps to solve racism in America. And they said the first one, I'll just take the first one, have empathy. What does that mean? The way I understand empathy, that means that for me to have empathy, I have to be of a higher standing. So what are they saying? The whites are better, so they have to have empathy on the lesser group, the blacks. So are they trying to solve racism or trying to make them see, hey, you know what, we're better because we're lighter? What are they doing? Do they have an ulterior motive? Is that solving inequality? Because that is their first role, that is their first motive when it comes to solving racism. And then, instead of making it better, they make it worse because it trickles down to now Africa. In Nigeria, according to an article by East Africa, 9th August 2018, surprisingly the same date, in Nigeria alone, 77% of women, more than 60 million people, are using lightening products on a regular basis. So by having empathy on them, you're telling them that being lighter is better. So are you solving it or increasing the inequality? It is a myth. It cannot happen. Thank you.
First opposer, you have 3 minutes to make a statement.
In this universe that we are living, there are no 2 leaves that are alike in as much as they will look similar. But there is no antagonism between the branches on which they grow. These are the words of Mohandas Gandhi, and I in agreement with this statement. My beautiful name being Kogo Victor Simwa from Kapsabet High School, opposing this motion that states that reducing inequality is a myth that can't be achieved. So what is to reduce? When we say we are reducing, this is to bring down the intensity of something in matters size and matters quality. What is inequality? This is the unfair situations in society where some people have more opportunities, more money than others. We have different types of inequality: social inequality, political inequality. We have economical inequality. In this, it is umbrella. The gender inequality that we always make a lot of noise about. The income inequality we keep talking about. They are all in these three. So what is a myth? A myth is a commonly held but false belief. Commonly held but false. Well, according to CNN, an article and report dated June 24th, 2018, on a case about Saudi Arabia. Well, it was the only country in the universe that banned women from driving. On a royal statement released by King Salman, that is last year, June 26th. With the new guidelines to be implemented by June this year, which I believe they did, women are now in Saudi Arabia driving. We are here making a lot of noise about how this is an inequality, this is a myth. Well, this is Saudi Arabia. This ban has been decades old, but at the end of the day, because of a campaign spearheaded by the prince, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the 22-year-old prince. This is a campaign called the Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia. The decades-old ban is lifted, and women are now driving. This increases the women in the workforce of Saudi Arabia. You will agree with me that women in Saudi Arabia were spending their income on male drivers, but now they are saving, they are able to invest to make their lives better. Well, KCP results have been released just recently, and statistics from NEC show it that the difference between the number of boys and girls was 2,543, with boys on the upper side. Well, in 2000, the difference between boys and girls was 15,729. Should I say more? Grazie.
Second proposer, you have 3 minutes for your rebuttal.
Reducing inequality is a myth that can't be achieved. From Loreto High School, Limuru, Sally Modoni strongly proposing this point. My opponent has wisely brought to our attention what is happening in Saudi Arabia. The year is 2018. You think it is fair that women have been allowed to drive in 2018, and we applaud Saudi Arabia and say kudos for actually making it fair for your women to drive in 2018. 2018. What has happened in these years may bring to your attention that, in fact, gender inequality has been one of the most fought for inequalities. In fact, it cropped out in the late 19th century, as given by quota. It cropped up in the late 19th century, where some people came about and said, our women need to vote. But here you're telling us proudly that in 2018, we have allowed women in Saudi Arabia to drive. And then you come and dispute the fact that reducing inequality is a myth. But it is a myth because it is 2018 years after Christ came, and still women were only allowed to drive recently. How is that fair? Let me bring some statistics to our attention. According to Markers.com, an article dated March 1st, 2018, there are 62 million girls all over the world that are denied education. Does this look like gender equality to you? Does it not look like a myth? Trying to attain equality in this world is like swimming in circles. You're going nowhere fast. You are attaining nothing. Statistic number 2 from the same source: 15 million girls in the world annually are made to get married under the age of 18 without or with their permission. Does that look like it is equality to you? What we are trying to say as Loreto is that equality cannot be attained. It is a fallacy that has been fed into our heads to try and make us move forward thinking that we are going somewhere. Under the Sustainable Development Goals, goal number 5 is gender inequality. Yet I have a feeling that the next development goals we have will still have gender inequality as a goal, and so on and so forth until the end of time, because we cannot change something that is ingrained in us. From the beginning, we are taught that women have their own place in society. And no matter how much you try and tell me otherwise, this will always be the fact. In the same Saudi Arabia, might I educate you, women are not allowed to hold jobs that are said to put them in contact with men. So yes, we are now driving in 2018, but we can't work near men. So, is this equality? Is equality a myth, or is it attainable? Think about that.
Second opposer, you have 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Well, sometimes I wonder at the futility of some actions. We have seen out in our lives that no matter how bright the sun is, it can never outlive its sunset. And our dear opponents are trying to throw stones to the sun, trying to prevent it from setting, but please, it will be impossible. The first proposer talked about Aristotle, but I rely on the Bible more than Aristotle, because Aristotle is talking about us trying to make unequal things equal. But here we're not talking about things, we are talking about human beings. And in the sight of God, I'm a Christian, all men and women are equal. The second proposer talked about Saudi Arabia and driving in 2018. But the question is, are we making progress? At least we've made some progress, and this thing is not going to be achieved in a day. Racial and other types of inequalities will be phased out bit by bit. I would like to turn your minds into miniature atlases and take you to north of Kenya. You see Ethiopia, the president is a woman. And let's go again to West Africa. The former head of state for Liberia is a woman, Ellen Sirleaf Johnson. We go to some of the most powerful nations in the world. We go to the United Kingdom. We see the premier there is called Theresa May, a woman. Just slightly near that country, we go again to Germany. We see that the chancellor of Germany is a woman, Angela Merkel. The question is, are we making progress or are we regressing? Think about it. We have been able to also see that even here in Kenya, this thing of gender equality is going to be achieved, even if it is bit by bit. But the question is, are we going to achieve this goal? Yes, we are going to achieve it. Because in Article 26, Part 8 of the Constitution, we have been able to see that the government has been empowered to use legislative and legal means to enforce 2/3 gender rule in appointive or elective offices. The question is, when you look right now in Kenya, MPs are thinking about introducing this bill and passing it, and it is going to be passed. Mark my words. Right now, if I compare 8 years ago in 2010, we had something called conceptual and continental inequality, such that we Africans, we were not appreciative of things that we produce ourselves. You could find in Kenya girls and women busy every evening watching cheap grade B Mexican soap opera. It is La Mujer de mi Vida. It is Storm Over Paradise. It is El Cuerpo. It is Dulce Amor. But nowadays, you'll find that we have shifted from thinking that the white things are supreme, and you'll find people proudly watching at 8 p.m. My Two Wives in KTN. You will find us enjoying DJ Shitty's jokes more than Kevin Hart's jokes in America, meaning that continental and conceptual equality can be achieved. Need I say more? Even right now, 2016, we separated conjoined twins. We thought it was only possible in America, but this is going to be reduced because inequality in terms of healthcare is being levelized. Need I say more? No, I shouldn't. Thank you.
The proposers have been asked, with regards to the example given about the ladies in Saudi Arabia being allowed to drive, isn't that in itself proof that reducing inequality is not a myth and can actually be achieved? The opposers have been asked. The second opposer said that he would not subscribe to the words of Aristotle simply because he's a Christian. Isn't that inequality in itself? Proposer number 3, you have 3 minutes to respond.
Opposer number 3, Fraser Wendy from Loreto High School, Limuru. Opposing the motion, proposing the motion, reducing inequality is a myth that cannot be achieved, that cannot be attained. So I've been asked a question, and the question is, isn't it good enough that you can actually reduce the inequality in Saudi Arabia just because they let people drive cars finally in 2018? Now, Saleh has spent time here trying to let you see the sense in why just 2018. I don't know why you haven't gotten that. She spent like almost 2 minutes trying to put into you why 2018. And I am also here coming to emphasize the same fact, why 2018? Why not those other early times? When did people even start driving in Africa? Or let me say, in Kenya. When did the first woman ever even try to drive in Kenya? No, you've gotten that. The question is, why 2018? Our cities are starkly more unequal than the nation as a whole, a reflection of long-standing continuing patterns of local segregation and sprawl. Now, geographic segregation is another form of inequality that the world looks like it will never achieve. So now, the reasons why the world will never reduce such an inequality is that one, we'll talk about illiteracy. Now, according to Globe and Mail, 775 million people still can't read in the world as of today. And looks like 152 million children are likely to follow on such a path. So sad. Why? Because they can't even afford to go to school. That the fact that the world cannot read the fact that these people still cannot read will never make them to be able to be in the same level and standard with the rest. So what does geographic segregation means? Geographic segregation exists whenever proportions of populations or economic rates of two or more populations are not homogeneous. And I'm saying the fact that we have not attained that literacy level that you can all be at par and think at the same pace, that can never happen. The second reason why we can never attain equality in this sector is that there is something called digital revolution. Now, according to Global Issue, an article by Anapsha on 7th January 2013, at least 80% of humanity in this world live less than $10 a day. $10 a day. That translates to 1,000 shillings, let me say. Now tell me, if these people are if 80% of the world population lives below that, tell me how many of them can attain a smartphone? That's why I'm saying we cannot attain equality when it comes to this. This geographic segregation is an equality that can never be attained unless we get to equity. But I'm trying to say the facts that I've given just tell you that we cannot get to that equity. Thank you.
Third opposer, you have 3 minutes to respond.
From Kapsabet High School, I stand tall to answer the question that I was asked and also later air out my views. So, to the question for which we are asked, we have to take the fact that we cannot compare God to fellow human beings. Remember, Aristotle is a human being. And here below, there is some reasonable inequality that puts us below God, but we ourselves as human beings, in front of ourselves, we are equal. This motion, reducing inequality, is a myth that can't be achieved. It is achievable. And in some examples also, we find that it's already making impact. For example, in the case of reducing the gap that has been taken by the government to reduce that gap between the disabled people and the able people. Nowadays, that we see that in all public institutions, we can't miss to find ramps, we can't miss to find toilets for special people, because as the government itself is trying to reduce the gap between the disabled people and the able people. Only recently, we had the case about the special examination papers, whereby there are large prints for those people who are visually disabled. And we have seen it making history, where in KCPE 2018, only recently, special persons people had 446. And just last year, we saw the case of a girl with a disability of albinism. That was Goldalyn Kakuya, scoring a full 455 marks despite the disability. So the government has been trying to reduce this gap between disabled people and able people, and in some sectors like education, it's already making impact, because in KCP 2018, just this year, we saw 8 special persons with disabilities scoring above 400. We also have improvement of financial schemes. I'll take the examples from Dollhouse. We have Nora Helmer. In that patriarchal society that used to exist in Norway, we find that women are not allowed to carry out any financial activities. But Nora instead did that financial activity, and the society was against her. But with the end of that Victorian era, we have seen women come up to handle financial activities, and some of them are even currently owning banks. For example, the Kenya Women Microfinance Bank. Most of you know it as KWFT. That is an example of a bank that is currently being owned by women, despite long ago the society was against women carrying financial transactions. And when you also look at Doll's House, its origin, Norway, we have seen them come up so strongly that even the current finance minister of Norway is a woman. Her name, Siv Jensen, who has served from 16th October 2016 up to now. So this is not a myth. It's something that can be achieved, and in some sectors, it's already making impact. Otieno, many thanks.
Proposition, you have 1 minute for your final submission.
Despite the fact that there are many types of inequalities, our worthy opponents have decided to base all their arguments on gender inequality, and I simply will follow suit. When we talk about gender inequality, and how we are saying that it cannot be attained, because let us look at statistics. Out of the 47 governors in Kenya, only 3 are women. Out of our 47 senators, only 3 are women. We only have 22 members of parliament. Does this look like gender equality to you? Because out of the 47, only 3, that means that 44 are simply men. We are saying that it cannot be attained. It is simply impossible for us as men and women to be at par. The reference to Saudi Arabia has greatly been made. And is it gender equality that women have been allowed to drive in 2018? We are saying, why 2018? Because 2018 continues striving to the point that we will never catch up with the men. Because now we are 1 step forward, but there are a million steps ahead of us. Is that gender equality? Is it equality in any way?
Opposition, you have 1 minute for your final statement.
My name is Johnson Aboge, and I'm not a prophet of hope, nor am I related to one. But I have a dream, just like Martin Luther King Jr., while he was in Memphis, the state of Tennessee, making his last speech, that I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. The promised land that you're talking about is the motion, not gender equality, but the motion is reduced inequalities. We want to reduce them, and that is what we are doing now. When you look at South Africa, apartheid is over. When you look at the world, we see many more women leaders. And generally, when you look at everything, we can see that we're trying to levelize everything so that we can be at the same status as our fellow human beings. Let me tell you, this is going to be achieved even if it is in the year 2100, but Christ will come back and find that at least we have reduced the inequalities. Thank you.
what I noticed is each of the members there had their own individual style of delivery, and that is something that I find is an expression of how much you have put into the work that you've done, because the styles were, each of the participants had an individual style of delivery, and it was all great, and it worked for them. And I just want to say that for me, it was a difficult round because of how good the work was. Keep it up. Thank you.
I just want to address some specific persons that were on stage. And I want to start with Kapsabet boys. Kogo, I think I wrote one thing. I could listen to you for quite some time, you know. There's a way that you teach, and I felt like I was in a classroom. Aboge as well, you come out to me as a very creative speaker, and I think you're very excellent. I even love the ending, how creative it was, you know. You have some style of language that I enjoy as well, and that was beautiful. Otieno, I like the name. Very good points, yes. Very good points. I think you had mastered the content very well. I think what you can do is also keep practicing as well on coherency. And I know Aboge and Kogo will teach you a few things. But well done as well for your team. You mentioned just one thing, and you said long ago women couldn't carry out transactions. And I thought it's good to validate it, okay? Because long ago sometimes can be, you know, you never know. So it's good to say which dates or when, all right? Loreto, the beautiful girls. Melanie, always a powerhouse. Well done. Definition of terms, well done research. You know what a debate means, and that was well done. Commendable, all right? I don't know whether your spirit has been going down after you debated, but when you're on stage, you're amazing, all right? Yeah, so keep it up there, all right? Sally, good cross-examination. I like the way we thought we had gotten a very strong point from Kogo. Then you came and destroyed it all over. However, you mentioned about 69 million girls are denied education. And I thought that was a very good point. Nonetheless, I wish you mentioned as compared to this number of boys. You know, that would have now been a very good way for us to compare and say, really, you have a very strong point. But well done. Wendy, fair enough as well, okay? And I think as I have addressed Otieno as well, I think for you, the third speakers, there's something about you have very good content. And I think that was very much commendable. But I think about your style and how you deliver, you want to keep it at par. Everybody's unique in their own way, but you work on your style, and everybody grows there. All the best to both teams.
Loreto Limuru Girls High School. The judges awarded you 74%. Let's give them a round of applause.
Kapsabet Boys High School. The judges saw it fit to award you with a difference of 6%. 80%. Let's give them a round of applause. And let's congratulate both teams for giving us a good debate and a good show.
We'd also like to appreciate our sponsors, Brand Kenya Board and Blaze by Safaricom, for facilitating this show. Until next time, I have been your host, Esperancia Kapanga.
And I am Chris Buru. Don't go anywhere.